um, a chance to connect. So give me 1 second, Matt. I'm going to share my screen with you.
All right.
Um, Share a window. We're going with OBS. Okay, so you should see my OBS window now.
Yep. That's it.
Awesome. Okay, so what's up, guys? Thanks for joining us tonight. We have Matthew Monahan here. For those of you who don't know, Matthew Monahan is he's a really good player. He got first place at ARG Edison, and just recently this weekend got second place in a Massachusetts regional. And he was playing Burning Abyss, the same deck that he got first place at Edison with. Obviously, a different build. So we're going to talk about that build. We're going to ask him about the tournament, and we're going to take it from there. So Matt, thanks for joining us again.
Yep. No
Uh,
problem.
yep. We're going to pull up your deck profile. I think we have it right here. Yep. So this is the deck that Matt took to a second place finish. How many players were at this regional?
There were like 300, but they apparently didn't book a huge room, so it got cut off to like 200. But
Oh
it like
wow.
ended up being a little bit more than that because they gave a bunch of people like a round one loss for some reason, so they could set up extra tables for more entrants.
Oh wow, that's nuts. Kind of hurts
Mm-hmm.
to be those guys.
Yep. Could enter quickly for like any tournament to avoid that.
So, sorry, Matt. I don't know if you connected when I said, but I'm also trying to juggle a fantasy draft at the same time. I only have like a few more players to pick.
No
Um,
problem.
so let's talk about this build. You decided to go with the Trapless +3 Fiend Grieving. What
Mm-hmm.
made you decide on this build?
So basically, a lot of the you know, workings of the format are constants between now and last format. The only things that really changed were the new set and Jin being banned. As far as the new set goes, basically the two things that came out were Cosmo and Perfamage, and if you look at them like individually, like Cosmo is in a bad matchup for this deck, and it's a worse matchup for traps, but it's a better matchup for trapless if you have like outs to forerunner, like F-Zero so you can go for damage, and then there are other routes too, like crashing Virgil and then searing it back, and then the thing that they get off forerunner you can bounce back. And then like the other new thing from the new set is Perfamage, which splashes either Necroz or BA. Like it doesn't make a huge difference to whether you're playing against Shadal Perfamage, not Shadal Perfamage, Necroz Perfamage or regular Necroz, and the reason why is like they can search Valk either way, so they're probably gonna have a way to stop you from killing them. So it's just like something that they can hard draw like on top of that, which doesn't make a huge difference. It just helps them make Dweller a little bit more.
Yeah.
Uh, and then in the Shadal deck, it's not a huge difference between that and like Star Seraph when you're going into them. They're both things that like help them summon rank four. So a lot of the constants the same. Um, the only other thing that was different is now people are playing Exa and Great Sork, which means that you can't really do the village strategy because what they can do is like, and they can do this like really early in the game. Just send Exa with the Great Sork, and then even if you have village up, they can just special summon it from the banished pile with X's effect, the Great Sork. So then they'll have a spellcaster and they'll still be able to get to their normal summon. So you have to like attack it in a different way, and how I did that was I realized that like you actually don't have to. A lot of people think that you just have to like stop Necross from playing completely to combat the deck. But if you have a strong enough engine of a deck, you can like sort of bring that deck ceiling down to where it's compatible with yours, to where you can actually beat it playing regular Yu-Gi-Oh and stuff like Valor Maxi, Fiend Griefing,
Hmm.
help to do that, and that's why I decided to play this deck.
Sounds solid. You definitely put a lot of thought into it, considering everything that's changed about the meta, and everything that could potentially have changed without being glaringly noticeable. And then it definitely paid off. I mean, second place is definitely something to be proud of. But you're one of those players who I've watched while judging the circuit series, and I can tell. I'm sure other people feel the same way that you're an extremely talented player, and you're not. It's great because it's refreshing. You're not one of the big names, but you're definitely a name, and you definitely deserve that name because you work hard and you can see the theory behind every build you played. Even in Edison, when you were playing the Secret Village main deck, I just thought that was brilliant. Um,
Hmm.
so back to your build, I noticed that you side decked more BA monsters. What was that for?
So basically, like all the other stuff in the side deck is concessions to stuff that the BA monsters themselves can't beat. Like BA monsters aren't going to help you against Window, therefore you have to have like concessions like Defusions, and they're not going to help you against Floodgates like Shadow Mirror, Lose a Turn, etc. So you have stuff like Fire Lake, MSTs, Galaxy Cyclones. Um, Otherwise, the BA monsters, and keep in mind, I'm not really even siding any cards against Necroz because the main deck is already, tailored to play against Necroz. So we want to have a side deck that's as applicable to as much of the board as possible. And the only cards that like are universally sideable are more engine cards, and it's perfectly fine because if you have these concessions to the stuff that you can lose to, all you're gonna want is more engine cards, and that's the same way that people build like Necroz deck. They have their engine cards, and then their concessions to MS to like floodgates and stuff. They'll have like MSTs and whatnot because they know that the only thing that they can lose to if they can play Yu-Gi-Oh is the stuff that they have to play concessions to, and that's why you shouldn't be playing like extraneous stuff in Necroz. Like the mirror forces and stuff. That's why when you see like the more like better players make the build for those decks, they kind of
Hmm.
exclude those kind of like random cards, and that's kind of how I built the side deck.
Fair enough. Um, so how that's defusion there, right next to the BA monsters. My
Yep,
eyes aren't exactly the best. Um,
yep, 3D fusion
yep. So obviously, I'm assuming that that's the doll matchup. How did
and
those
heroes.
perform?
Um, Speaking about the regional specifically, I only played against one Performate Shadal, and I also played against one hero. I sided them in against both, even though like my game against hero was kind of butchered because I got a game loss, game one. But I didn't end up drawing him, but it wasn't a huge deal because I didn't end up getting floodgated by Winda. I did my opponent did summon Dark Claw, but I was always able to out it with Virgil by summoning it, and then like even if they don't play the mass change preemptively, all you have to do is attack the Shadow Mist, and that way like they're in this terrible position where if they fuse for Dark Claw, you can just attack over it, then mount something else. If they don't fuse, you can just like get rid of the card, and then if they fuse for Anki, you can just main phase two use Virgil. So you just win no matter what in that situation, and that's basically I didn't draw a defusion otherwise.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Um, Galaxy Cyclone, that's a card, that goes without saying. It has a lot of synergy in the BA deck, and honestly, it's a lot better than people give it credit for. And then the one Fire Lake. So what did you typically bring the one Fire Lake in against?
Originally the idea, and I did this for Edison too, a concession to cards like Lose a Turn or even Shadow Mirror, so you can send it with Cagna, so it's essentially like semi-searchable, then Crash and Dante add it, and then you can deal with those kind of floodgates. But I've actually since taken it out of my deck, and the reason why is because specifically with Lose a Turn, which is like the two decks I play are already Essential and Cliffwood, it's kind of a false out because the Dantes have to switch to defense mode for the card's effect, which means you can't crash it on the same turn. And the problem with that is with Ysenjus, they have the bounce guy, so they'll bounce back the Dante, which means it won't be sent to the grave to be able to add the Fire Lake, and then against Clifford they can carry her to bounce it back. So I've taken it out on that logic. It can still out Shadow Mirror, but the thing is like when Shadow Mirror is out, Cagna can't send it, so it's not really searchable anymore. And but that was the logic I used to play it, but I have since taken it out.
Okay. Um, so let's talk about your extra deck. It looks, fairly standard. Three Dante, two Virgil, three Downerd. Um, the Alucard, the Engineer, the is that a Muzu rhythm?
Yep.
So how did you like the Muzu rhythm? Let's talk about that.
So I played that over Leviathan, and basically it does the same thing, but Muzzle Rhythm kills cards that are between 26 and 3000, which means basically the Cosmo card, and then so it makes it so you don't have to like go Giga bring Virgil Crash to then bring it back with Seer or something. You can actually like out it well. And that was like, and they both also out Dark Claw. So basically, everything between that and Leviathan is the same, except for Mizorythm can out slightly higher cards. Also, Necrosis of Valkyries too, without having to be forced to summon Acid Golem, which obviously isn't ideal in a lot of situations.
Right. So a couple things that I see absent from this build. Not necessarily a bad thing. I personally agree with not playing them, especially with the fact that you're playing a Trapless build. But what are your thoughts on the BA decks that have been playing both Skill Drain and the Traveler?
Skill Drain's pretty like it's just like the vanities and all those. It's got the same kind of idea as far as the floodgate goes. It is a little worse in the idea that it's harder to kill them under your own skill drain, and I think that's a huge problem with like floodgates, like trap floodgates in Burning Abyss, because they block your own engine because your all your cards say you can't have a spell or trap to special summon them, and what that means is they'll survive longer because you can't kill them as quickly. So that therefore they'll have a higher chance of being able to out your cards because they'll have more turns to be able to draw these outs to your cards, and that's how the same way that I look at like cards like Mistaken, all that stuff, and not even just on that, but there's also like a higher amount of cards that they can have that can out it. Like with cards like Mistaken Arrest, literally all they can have is Danko Saka, and that's it. Or like an end phased MST, which you can deal with. But
Right.
yeah,
And an end phase MST isn't even that bad for you because an end phase MST just lets you
mm,
special summon next turn. You're not as locked out. Denko Sekka is definitely the problem card.
yeah,
But I think that we've seen a shift in the meta where not a lot of people are even really playing Denko Sekka right now.
yeah. And even then, you make boards with like Engineer. So like on the summon of Danko, you can either negate it with Helic or banish it with Farfu, so you can still use your stuff. Or if you have effect failures, the same thing.
Right. So let's talk about your matchups. What did you face each round, and how did the cards and the deck perform?
Round one, I played against Cliffwood. As far as Cliffwood goes, my theory is you just auto lose round one, but it's fine because you win game two and three due to your side deck being able to answer them, and like you obviously lose game one because you have like 12 cards in your main deck that are basically useless. So I lost game one. This is the kind of deck where you have to have really strict like technical play to be able to do well. You can't like mess up at all, and I messed up game two, so I actually lost round one. Round two, I played against Perfumate Shadal. Uh, Game one, he flipped some trap card I never heard of called Scrap Iron Statue. I still have to read it, but that's all he did, and I guess he bricked otherwise. So I sided for like a trap monster deck. Like I put in MSTs and Cyclones. Then he ended up beating me with the Trapeze Magician construct, OTK fusing from deck on the next game. Game three, he bricked again, and then round three, I played against. I believe I played against here. Oh no, I played against Necroj. Round three, my friend from DGZ. Andrew, and game one, he Trishula'd me, but the thing is, you usually win the games that you get Trishula'd in this deck, and the reason why is because unless they kill you on the same turn, and a lot of people don't realize this about Necroz, but like they have to play they have to use like most of their hand to like do a Trishula play, and they also can't search when they have a board with their spell cards engraved, which means any play they have to hard draw after that. So if you can float past Trishula and not die that turn, you usually end up winning because what ends up happening is your BA monsters can float forever, whereas you can wait until you have a play that actually can kill them around the Trishula, and like it's especially good if your play to kill them farfas the Trishula, which means that they get it back, and then they still can't search even if they you didn't kill them. So that's what happened game one, and then game two, I remember just getting Danko socket and I lost really quickly, and then game three we went into time, and this deck's pretty favorable in time.
Definitely. You have a
Yeah.
lot of different things for time. Barbar being the latest addition to the deck for time.
hmm
And obviously, the good old reliable Nightmare Shark. So, how how prevalent was Barbar? How often did you end a game with it? How often did you win in time because of it?
Usually the games I won in time were because of engineer. Like you just get a little bit ahead of them, then you summon engineer, and they just can't do anything. But barber ends up being the difference, like a lot, and it's due to how like the numbers stack up. It's due to how you know engineer to stop a Valk, and then two barbers plus the other monsters is usually still going to be game, um, and then stuff like what's the card called? Perfumage. Damage Juggler.
Yeah.
All It's basically how all the damage stacks up around that to where two barbers usually solves every single issue with not being able to OTK them.
Mm-hmm. Definitely seems like that. I know that I was playing on stream yesterday, and I was up against Barnabas. He was playing the skill drain, which I just disagree with in the deck. I feel like you said yourself, it's harder to kill your opponent through the skill drain than without it. And he was playing the skill drain, and we had a very back and forth game where he had gone into Acid Golem and I had gone into Diamond Crab King. And I was playing pure Clown Blade, so I had paid quite a bit of life, and he ended up just killing me by summoning a Barbar and crashing it into my monster. And
Hmm.
I just felt so robbed of that game.
Yeah,
So um, so let's continue with your matches. I don't think that was all of them. We ended with the
yeah, that
Necros.
was yeah, that was up to round three. Round four, I played against Hero. We got a random deck check. So they take my deck and then they came back a few minutes later and they're like, you forgot to write Fire Lake on your deck list. So I got a game one loss and they made me play without Fire Lake for the rest of the day, which isn't a huge deal. It's only like one card in the side deck, so it was like whatever. But the main issue was I was playing my friend Parker and I knew he was playing Hero, which sometimes isn't that favorable of a matchup depending on how they open. So I was just hoping it would work out. Game two, he opens like a standard diamond play, but I have the Virgil that I was talking about earlier, and then
Right.
game three he kind of works. So round five, I play against. Um, I believe I play. Oh yeah, I play against another Necroz. Oh, my friend Chris Woolheater. Uh, game one was crazy. It took like 30 minutes because like he started off with like a unicorn and a vanity, and then I special Varber after summoning another BA and he vanities, so I normal summon it, attack the unicorn. He doesn't Valk, which he regrets because I enter battle phase and then I book a moon the unicorn, which means the unicorn dies, he can't Valk, and then vanities dies, so I'm free to play from there. Then after that, it's like we both just summon a bunch of monsters and eventually a second Barber Burn guard me there. And then game two, he just bricked and I drew ridiculous. Round six, I played against another Necroz. Um, I just opened mistake and arrest both games, and the match ended in like 10 minutes. And then I played another Necroz in round seven. My friend Tim Velosky. We went into game one and two were pretty standard. I OTK'd him game one, and then actually game two wasn't that standard. I lost to a flying C, which I don't usually expect in Necroz. Game two, and then game three, he we went into time, and like I said, my deck's just favored in time. And then in the last round, I played against my friend Chris O'Brien, who was using Clifford, and I won somehow. Like you're supposed to auto lose game one against Clifford, but somehow I ended up winning game one due to like the scout pay 800s and the barbers and like the piercing from down. So it ended up working out. And then game two, he just bricked. So I ended up 7-1 after losing round one and ended in second place.
Nice. Seems pretty solid. So let's talk about Flying Sea. How does what does your deck do to deal with Flying Sea? You just basically, I mean, you have the Dark Holes, you have the Book of Moon, but what else is your kind of answer to Flying Sea?
The theory is that like the decks that like it'll really matter when you get Flying Seed against don't really side it. So like Necroz doesn't side it, and it would be a huge problem if that deck maxied this deck. But the reason why they don't play it is because usually people play Trap Burning Abyss, and the concessions to that aren't Flying Sea. They're like MSTs for the floodgates and stuff. So that means that you're going to be getting Flying Seed against slower decks, and the good thing about that is because they're not going to be able to kill you as quickly, and it's the same reason why you don't want to play like Skill Drain, like I was getting back to. Um, you have more turns to draw into outs to it and good outs. And the reason why is because they're slow enough decks to where you can out Flying Sea like that. So whether you do, Crane into Rubik and then Synchro with the Flying Sea into Virgil. Um, you could do Libic special Rubik or just hard draw the Book of Moon / Dark Hole or Fiend Griefing for Firefighter or whatever. You have enough time to be able to out Flying Sea, whereas you wouldn't if Necroz sided it. But that's the good part about this deck is Necroz doesn't side that card, so that's how you deal with Flying Sea.
Fair enough. We have some questions from the chat. Um, they want to know first if they start with the Jew. Did you mistaken arrest them there, or do you wait for a different search effect?
Um, you usually, if you can kill them, you mistaken arrest there. But if like you killing them has to do with resolving Fiend Griefing, you want to wait until they use a Klaus or Brio. And the reason why is you'll still obviously be able to play around Valk because you'll be able to send it back with Fiend Griefing, but you'll still be able to activate your Fiend Griefing to get your Graph or Seer effect, which means you'll be able to kill them and still play around that. That's a good question.
Okay. Um, yeah, I actually like that answer too. Um, so aside from that, I think we've talked about all the unique things, and we've covered all the points. Is there anything else you wanted to mention about the deck or the tournament that you didn't yet?
Um, not that I think about it. I wish I didn't misplay in round one because maybe I would have been able to go on undefeated. But I would have played all different opponents, so who knows?
Yeah, I mean it's a big what if. You never know.
Yeah.
But misplays are there to learn from.
Hmm.
Um, hang on, it is my turn to pick. Uh, they're definitely there to learn from, and if if you didn't misplay, you wouldn't you. Sorry, I need to formulate that thought. Um, if you didn't misplay round one, like you said, you would have played all different opponents, and who knows, you would have maybe had a tougher track. Um,
Yeah, like there
or
was a guy. My deck auto loses to the Clifford Towers Turbo deck, and my theory behind that was just whatever. People, that's more of a dueling network trend than anything else. There ended up being one guy playing the deck that was like really close to me in the late rounds, and I probably would have gotten paired with him eventually if I won round one, and that's just an auto loss. So I guess it did work out in the end.
yeah. Um, so you didn't have any problems OTKing through the damage jugglers or the Valks you were saying. Um, what are your thoughts? The chat wants to know. Um, what are your thoughts on the new BA Xyz monster Beatrice?
We talked about it in one of my chats a little bit earlier. It's basically a themed version of Engineer, and that's pretty good. We even talked about it like overlaying two level six in another deck, and then you have like a pseudo Laval chain, but it's obviously not abusable because you can't use its effect on the same turn that you summon it. But as far as like a better engineer goes, I'd definitely play that card.
Right. Well, you can use its effect the turn you summon it if
If it's normally summoned
right.
with two level six.
Right.
Yeah,
We
you're
were
right.
we were joking around on stream the other night. I've seen some uh, I won't call them bad because I don't want to offend anyone, but interesting ideas of using Tannhauser Gate in BA
Yeah,
to
yeah.
make that, and also they've been using Tannhauser Gate to go ahead and uh, they've been using Tannhauser Gate to play Ultimate Sulkin in Burning Abyss.
That's the level zero. It's
Right.
treated as level 12, right? Yeah,
Yep.
that's incorrect. Yeah.
So, I've seen that. So I saw a crazy deck idea that included Tannhauser Gate, Ultimaya, Beatrice.
Hmm.
I mean, Beatrice ranked up on top of a Dante essentially says add Fire Lake to your hand.
Yeah,
Because
that too.
you could detach the Dante to send the Fire Lake, and then it's nuts that it says any card. I don't know if that's just a mistranslation or what, but the fact
Yeah, I
that it
know.
says any card is just retarded. It enables so much.
Yeah, it's like a pseudo Laval chain in that sense, and like even like searchable traps has become a more popular thing. It's probably going to be like the way of the future with between like the trap tricks XYZ, and there's just going to be more cards to where you can just get free traps, and it's like another form of defense. But even then, like the older monsters where the defense is like into them, like whether they're shooting Quasi Dragon or they're effects that stop you on your turn, like Clausulus, might probably get trumped by just searching just better traps.
Yeah. Um, so we have a question. Would the Fire Lake have helped if you still had access to it?
It was actually pretty funny. When I got paired against Cliff White round 8, I thought it would just be like really ironic that they took away my Fire Lake, so I thought I would just lose round 8 as a result, and like yeah, after like going through all those Necroz matches where I don't even side Fire Lake, but it ended up not making a difference because my opponent round 8 didn't draw well, so and I wouldn't have sided it against like any of the matchups in between that because they were all Necroz, so t them taking away the Fire Lake didn't end up mattering.
Fair enough. Um, and then let's see. I'm trying to scroll up, and they also want to know earlier um, your question that you answered about mistaken arrest and doing a different search effect. The answer that you gave, does it apply? Does it still apply if you're playing the trap variant of BA, or would you say that the answer you gave is solely for this trapless build that you played?
If you're gonna play something like Mistaken Arrest, that will stop them less of a time, less like chronologically of the time than cards like actual floodgates like Mistake. You're gonna want to play a deck that can actually capitalize on that and kill them because if you're not gonna like kill them on their next turn because you have all these BA monsters that just let you do 8,000 damage, um, if you don't like capitalize on that and then you don't have something else on top of it, they're going to be able to play next turn and you're probably going to lose. Like, and that's why I wouldn't really go that route in regular Burning Abyss unless you're playing like enough monsters to where you can feasibly you're probably going to be able to OTK them or put them in like barber ranges and that kind of stuff. So it's really a question of how big your monster count for BAs are, whether you want to play Mistaken Arrest or not.
Fair enough. So I want to talk to you about a side deck card that I don't know if you watch our stream at all, but we've been featuring CJ Kraus. Do you know who CJ is?
I've heard of them.
Yeah, we were featuring CJ Kraus. He was live actually at my house, and he built a pure Clownblade deck. We did the deck profile. I still need to export the deck profile, but one of the things that he's siding is Necro Valley, and he's decided that he's siding it in against BA as well. And when I thought about it, and I started like paying attention to the theory behind it, it actually made a lot of sense. So my question to you is: has anyone ever tried siding that in against you? And if they have, how did you deal with it? If they haven't, how devastating do you think that would be to your build? Because I see the cranes, in addition to the other things that are already stopped by it.
Yeah, so it's actually funny with the very original, not like the very original, but the earliest version of this deck that I made, uh, I actually wasn't maining three terraforming and three secret village. I was maining three terraforming, one secret village, and one Necro Valley, and the idea was that like I could just search Necro Valley and kill them around Valk. And other times, like I would get Necro Valleyed, and the only times it would really be a problem because usually it was like a deck like Yasenju that was activating Necro Valley against me, and then it would only be an issue if they like had Dark Hole on top of that. So then I lost my Nantes and couldn't add anything. But as far as OTKing them goes, all you do really are doing is cutting off Seer. So if you can still pull off OTKs, it's not a big deal. And as far as like how to deal with it, it's pretty hard to deal with, but the thing is, it's also not usually going to stop you from just like winning the game by attacking them. So if I was playing like more traps and like even the Traveler and the Burning Abyss build, that would stop that card, and then you would just probably have a really hard time dealing with it. So I think against Trap Burning Abyss, it's not that bad of an idea to side deck. Like obviously, it probably conflicts too much with like my build of the deck, but if I was playing a different deck, I don't think it would be that bad of an idea.
Okay. And then how did the cranes perform?
It was basically the second and third tour guide. Originally it was three crane, one tour guide, but I did the math, and with three crane and one tour guide going second, there's a 10% chance of opening multiples, which is bad, of those four normal summon monsters. So, but if you only play three, there's only a 5% chance. So you're cutting your chances of that in half, and also with the idea that you only really need to resolve one of those cards to win the game as far as like this deck's engine goes. So with three of them as opposed to four, you're cutting your chances of them being bad in half, while also you're still probably going to see at least one, especially with Tour Guide being searchable by the end of the game.
Fair enough. Um, I have no more questions. Stream, do you guys have any more questions for Matt before I let him go? Give them a little bit for that 20-second lag to hit them.
No problem. Is that how long the lag is?
It ranges. It ranges. Um, so here's a question. Is there a specific reason that you did not play Math plus Libic plus Pero?
Um, the thing about math is that, especially when you're playing like a build like this, obviously you're not just trying to like pass and leave the with no traps. So therefore, you're going to be sending Libic, and the problem with this is in that situation, literally any other BA would be the same thing as mathematician but better. And so like you have a BA in your hand and you have mathematician, you summon math, send Limbic, special the BA, overlay for Dante. It would have been the same thing if you instead of mathematician you special the BA and then normal the other BA from your hand. But the difference is you have a BA attached to Dante instead of a mathematician, so it's better. And as far as power goes, that's the same reason like you're not playing a back row deck, so you don't want to just like summon a monster and then sit there. You want to summon as many monsters as possible and just go for it because you won't have as much of a long game if you're not stopping the stuff that some of the stronger decks like Negrazo are doing. So you want to kill them quickly.
Okay. That makes perfect sense to me. We have another question. Thoughts on Vanity's Fiend in the main for the trap build?
Vanity's Fiend. I've seen Majesty's. I've never seen that card main, but I've definitely seen Majesty's Fiend main. A lot of times I get asked which is better, Majesty's Fiend or Vanity's Fiend for right now. Honestly, it depends. Like Necroz doesn't have like a high chance of just being able to hard open the cards to not like obviously specific cards like Darkhold that are constants for both of them or Regeki, but like cards to where they can ritual summon and then bring out the stuff to deal with Majesty's Fiend. I think it's a lot lower of a chance of them being able to deal with Majesty's Fiend in that way than it is for them to just wait two turns to be able to get like Great Sorcerer plus Decisive Armor, which most decks are playing to be able to out it that way. So in that respect, I think that if you were to play one of them, I'd play Majesty's Fiend before I played Vanity's Fiend.
Okay. I kind of agree there. But I don't know though, because if they already have a ritual summon,
Hmm.
they can just. I guess because you have the traps to back it up is what's important. But if you had if they already have the ritual summon, they already have the out to Majesty's Fiend, which is why I personally think that Vanities is better than Majesty's. Um,
Yeah, and
but
sometimes there are like other situations like Majesty's Fiend stopping Valk, so you can
yeah,
attack over like a unicorn. That way they can't normal summon like a level 4 and stuff like that.
that's true too. Um, okay, so we have quite a few questions that piled up for you. Sorry to keep stealing your time.
No problem.
So the next question for you is, what did you swap for the Fire Leak? You mentioned that since the regional, you took it out of your side deck. What did you end up putting in instead?
Um, well, since the regional, I like just in the past week, I've played a little bit of Yu-Gi-Oh, but not much. For now, it's a second copy of Dragig, but I don't know. I might look at siding Flying Seas again. So right now, it's a second Dragig.
Okay. And then the other question we have is, what is the bane of your deck? As in, what can ruin the chances of you winning? I think you mentioned that as Clifford already, but I don't know if you want to go into a little more detail. If maybe rather than a specific deck, but what like type of deck?
Yeah, so with Cliffwood, it's more game one that you ought to lose. Game two and three, you're fine, unless you're playing against the Turbo Towers deck, which I just decided was more of a DN trend than anything. Otherwise, like the toughest matchup for this deck, I don't know. I guess Ritual Beast is pretty hard if they open combo, but that's like a constant for literally every single deck, and the reason why, like they'll have a good chance of winning individually, but a bad chance of winning overall is you have to keep opening combo like every match to be able to do well with Ritual Beast. And it's funny, the guy who got first is a guy that goes to my locals. I guess I wasn't watching his games, but I guess he just like destroyed everyone and just open combo like all day. This guy and but yeah, that's basically it. The whole idea of the deck was to play something where, like, even matchup wise or just theory wise, with like the ideas of like floodgates versus outs to floodgates, you don't have a bad matchup, and BA is basically the closest possible thing you can get to that. I guess like, and people like to think Satella is a bad matchup for this deck, but you actually have so many ways to deal with Diamond or stop them before they can summon Diamond that it turns into actually, if you play correctly, a really easy matchup, unless you get Flying Seed game two and three.
Yeah, Flying Sea definitely hurts the deck.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so um, I wanted to kind of get your opinion, but I didn't get a chance to prep you with the information. So I'm a little disappointed because I know that you love decks like this, like the deck I'm about to describe. But you know the judge Bobby Kenny, who's been judging the circuit series as well. Um,
Um, I if I'm better with faces
sure,
than I am with names
he has
sometimes.
glasses and kind of like longer like a dirty blonde hair. Um,
I think that's one of Azad's friends, right?
no. He actually comes with me to the circuit series. Um, let me see.
I'm
Let
sure
me.
if I saw his face, I would
Yeah.
recognize him.
So hold on one second. Bobby. Okay, I just need you to put your face in the camera for a second, for real. Like, come around. What's up?
Oh yeah, yeah, I recognize him.
Okay.
He's the judge, yeah.
Okay. So he's been playing a deck on our stream. We've dubbed it Black Garden OTK.
Hmm.
And it's kind of it borrowed from the Blue Blooded Oni FTK deck with the Black Garden, Armageddon Knight, Summoner Monk
Yeah, I
combo.
played that deck at Nats.
Yeah. And he borrowed from that and threw in the stick chair engine, as well as a few other things to basically try and make it where you stick chair as consistently as possible, and you OTK really quickly. I feel like just looking at it, I can tell it's and from the talks I've had with you, I can tell it's a deck you would like. I wanted to prep you and kind of link you to the deck profile we did on the stream about it. But you should definitely go check that out when you
All
get a
right.
chance.
Okay, I
Um,
will.
I'll send you the link on Facebook.
All right,
Um,
sounds good.
but little disappointed that I couldn't talk to you about that since I didn't prep you in time. I just got swamped at work. Um, but how's this deck's Cosmo matchup? Your Trapless Burning Abyss.
It actually has a really good Cosmo matchup, and the reason why is because um, it actually wasn't that good without F-Zero, and it's because like you can always eventually like you'll always win the advantage game against them, and people like to think, oh, what do you do to Fortress Runner? What do they do when they have Fortress Runner? You're just floating forever until you can beat it. So, and you'll eventually be able to beat it. Rather it be like back then it was just crashing with Virgil and bringing it back, putting back the floater or Dark Hole and all that stuff. But the thing is, that takes a while to set up, and they're gaining 1,000 every single turn. So that was the only way that you would possibly, and sometimes you would even just deck out as a result, because once you got rid of all their cards, you need to kill them, and they'll have gained like they'll be in like the 15,000 ballpark by then, and it's just too much sometimes. So you need to play for damage against that deck, and that's why F-Zero is just the truth. Like they actually have very little to zero outs against F-Zero. The closest thing they have is like good witch and then like destroy it somehow. But even then, that's fallible. So you just like attack it with F-Zero, and then you take their Forerunner, and then you attack and you give it back, and they're still gaining like at a rate of plus 1800, or they're losing at a rate of 1800 each turn because they gain the 1000, and then they lose any additional damage. Like, and you usually loop the additional damage with stuff like Seer and Virgil, because once you can get a Virgil in the grave against that deck and then make F-Zero, you basically they're taking too much damage and they'll lose in like 3 turns.
Very, very, very fair statements. I do agree that F-Zero is pretty nutty. F-Zero is pretty nutty against a lot of things.
Hmm.
And it's also really nutty in BA because you can literally. I saw Noah Green at Nats. He had two Dantes on board, and his opponent just had a Unicorn and kind of more of a board presence. And
Yeah.
he was able to. He just went main phase two, overlaid the Dantes with two downards, and then overlaid the downards into the F-Zero to cause all those Dantes and everything to just fall off and trigger all their effects.
Hmm.
And then he triggered a Seer, got a Dante, went through. He was able to set up a big Traveler Fire Lake play to just clear wipe the board and take back the advantage. F-Zero just does a lot of nutty things for the deck.
Yeah, it
Um,
has those interactions like that sometimes.
so, have you ever done that where you've overlaid the downards on top and then made F-Zero just so that you can trigger your Dantes?
I've done that with Seer on Dante. I haven't done the downwards first because usually when I'm summoning F-Zero, it's in main phase one to like do something with it, and then I'll get like extra Seer effects, etc. But I can definitely see myself doing that sometimes.
Fair enough. And then you have a question here. Do you ever use any Exodia decks?
Uh, when I was bored on DN like a year ago, I made this deck that like it played a soul charge, and then like it got 3 blue eyes to the grave with like the dragon engine, and then I just soul charged for three blue eyes guys, and I made the giant trainer card, and then I drew three, and that's basically the most of my experience with Exodia. I have played other FTK decks though, like I made a Royal Magical Library deck as consistent as possible, and then like made a side deck that worked so you could side out library, so any outs to the library were bad, but otherwise no, I haven't really played much of FTK decks. Even with the new node, and I still have to look into that stuff.
Yeah. With Noding coming out, is it going to change what you're playing at all?
I don't know how much I will be playing after node comes out because like real life dictates I have to like work on some other stuff right now. But if I like am playing as much, I don't really know how much Nodin's going to affect it. Like, if I can figure out like an infallible FTK, which I don't think there is right now, but if something's like infallible, then I'll definitely be working on playing like that. But otherwise, I feel like Nodin just like adds to like the same way that Perfamage makes and Cloud Blade made rank 4 decks better. It's the same kind of thing, and it's just like a universal thing. It's not like game breaking, but it's just like pretty good card, you know.
Okay. And then one more question from the chat is, what's your opinion on Chicken Game?
Um, well, that just goes back to the what's it called? The Magical Explosion deck that I was playing Chicken Game in, and there are like other decks. Like obviously you can't play it in BA because you have to special summon from the hand, and like as a card that's like a replacement for upstarts in decks that aren't like trying to that people most people would call degenerate, where you're just trying to like win by some alt win con. I don't think it's good because it's kind of like 1 day of peace in the sense where like both players get the draw, but then you know they just have too many cards and your card only replaced itself. So I in like FTK decks like that, I would definitely play Chicken Game, but in other decks I wouldn't play it unless you're playing something like the this guy has a cool Zephyr deck on DN that like uses it and then it replaces it with Oracle of Zephyr to search out stuff, and like it increases the chances of opening the Ritual Beast combo. So other than that, I wouldn't play the card.
Fair enough. Um, all right. Well, it looks like they no longer have any questions for you.
All
I'm
right.
out of questions for you as well. I've taken 45 minutes of your time. I really appreciate it, Matt. I got a lot of valuable insight. I'm sure the stream did as well. I'll be exporting this interview to YouTube, and I'll send you a link to it once it is, in
All right.
case you want to spread it around. Um, really appreciate you joining us tonight,
No problem.
and hopefully I'll see you at another circuit soon enough.
All right. I'll talk to you later, Josh.
Yep,
Thanks for having me.
no problem. Have a good
Yes, sir.
night.
You too.